Which consoles can play the most Zelda games? The question came into my head a few days ago when I was thinking about the Gamecube. At one point, the Gamecube was able to play all Zelda games with the help of an add-on, the Game Boy Player. Obviously, the Gamecube can't play all Zelda games anymore, but I thought it would be cool to see which Nintendo consoles can play the most Zelda games today. And who knows, maybe this video might be helpful to anyone only wanting one or just a couple of consoles to play Zelda games with. There's a bit of criteria we have to establish first. When I say Zelda games, I'm talking about mainline titles, so no spin-offs. And that means no CDI games either, because that's just silly. And we're going to keep things strictly official Nintendo as well. Obviously, there are people who are going to be all like, emulators, but then, if you know about emulators and want to use those, then just use those. You already know that. You don't need a video telling you that, do you? I'm going to go split things up into two categories, handheld and home console. Let's start with handheld consoles first. The Game Boy only ever got one game, Link's Awakening, so if you have a Game Boy Pocket, or Game Boy Light, then that's it. The Game Boy Color is a little bit more versatile with 3 Zelda games being playable on it. Oracles of Seasons and Ages are kind of paired games, but they're different, so they count as separate games. And if you have the DX version of Link's Awakening, you even get to play that in proper color. The Game Boy Advance has quite a few playable games. In addition to the 3 already mentioned games, there is an original GBA game, Minish Cap. We also get 3 re-releases, the 2 NES games as well as A Link to the Past. A Link to the Past also includes an entirely original game called Four Swords. All of those add up to 7 different games. So far, every system has been completely backwards compatible, at least for Zelda games, but things are a bit different for the Nintendo DS. The original DS as well as the Lite are backwards compatible in terms of GBA games, but that's not the case with Game Boy and Game Boy Color games. For some reason, there were a bunch of people commenting on older videos how it's possible to play Game Boy and Game Boy Color games on the original DSs, but that's just simply not true. Not sure how that bit of misinformation developed. Four Swords is the only GBA Zelda game that can't be played on the DS because you need to have at least 2 players in order to play the game, and the DS has no link cable compatibility. There's 2 DS Zelda games, Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks, bringing the total up to 5 games. That's 2 less than the GBA. The DS is a good option though, because in my opinion it allows you to experience a bit of a broader range of games. The 2D games are well covered with the NES and SNES games as well as Minish Cap. And the DS games give you a 2.5D experience along with the Wind Waker art style. The DSi and DSi XL are interesting because they can't do the GBA games, except for Four Swords. That was re-released as Four Swords Anniversary Edition on both the DSi and 3DS. But right now there's no legit way to get it, so the DSi can only play 2 DS games, unless you downloaded it at the time when it was available. The Nintendo 3DS is up next. Obviously it can play the DS games, so that's 2 games so far. The 3DS has 2 original games, A Link Between Worlds and Triforce Heroes. Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask were both remade for the 3DS. This is one of the few times you can say the 3DS has a better looking port. If that wasn't enough, the eShop also gives you access to Zelda 1, Zelda 2, Link's Awakening, Oracles of Ages and Seasons, and if you have a new 3DS, A Link to the Past. So that's 11 games for the original 3DS and 12 games for the new 3DS. You could count Four Swords Anniversary Edition, but like with the DSi, it's no longer available for whatever reason. The Nintendo Switch is worth mentioning too. It's going to go on both this and the home console list. Obviously, there's Breath of the Wild, but with the Nintendo Online service, you also get access to the first Legend of Zelda. In other words, you get the choice between playing the oldest or the newest games in the franchise and nothing in between. Alright, on to the home consoles now. The NES has The Legend of Zelda and Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link. That's pretty much it. But then again, that's the first console that had Zelda games, so what do you expect? The Super Nintendo only has A Link to the Past, but if you throw in the Super Game Boy or Super Game Boy 2, you also get access to Link's Awakening, bringing the total up to 2 games. The Nintendo 64 has Ocarina of Time, obviously, and Majora's Mask, which means 2 Zelda games for that system as well. There's a bit of a pattern going on now, but that all changes with the Gamecube. Like I said in the beginning of this video, the Gamecube was once able to play all Zelda games there ever was. That's not the case now, but it's still a large amount of games. The Gamecube has 3 original Zelda games, Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, and Four Swords Adventures. The Legend of Zelda Collector's Edition includes 4 past games, the original Legend of Zelda, Zelda 2, Ocarina of Time, and Majora's Mask. So that's 7 games so far. But if you make use of the Game Boy Player, you can get access to all the Game Boy Color, and Game Boy Advance games. Link's Awakening, both Oracle games, A Link to the Past, Four Swords, and Minish Cap. Overall, that's 13 games. Currently, the GameCube is able to play the most amount of legit physical copies of Zelda games. Pretty impressive. That's actually the reason I bought a GameCube in the first place. Next up is the Wii. There's 2 Zelda games that came out on it, Twilight Princess and also Skyward Sword. GameCube-compatible systems allow Wind Waker, the proper version of Twilight Princess, Four Swords Adventures, as well as all the games in the Collector's Edition to be played. So that's 8 games, and the Virtual Console brings that up to 9 with A Link to the Past. Pretty good. The Family Edition Wii without GameCube goodness brings that number down a little bit. No Wind Waker or Four Swords Adventures, but you can still play the NES and N64 games because those games are also available on the Virtual Console. The Wii Mini can only play physical Wii games, so it's just 2 games for that one. Something worth mentioning is that the Virtual Console on the Wii is set to shut down on January 31st, 2019. There we go. Numbers are hard, apparently. The Wii U only ever got 1 original Zelda game, Breath of the Wild, but it did get HD remakes for the Wind Waker and Twilight Princess, which are awesome. Additionally, it can also play all the games a Family Edition Wii can. That brings that number up to 9. On top of that, you can also play games available on the Wii U eShop. So if you add all of the games up, you can play The Legend of Zelda, Zelda 2, A Link to the Past, Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, Minish Cap, Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, Phantom Hourglass, and Spirit Tracks, Skyward Sword, and Breath of the Wild, which makes 12 overall. Only the GameCube can play more at 13 games. The main difference is that the GameCube can play more Game Boy games and also the Four Swords games, but with the Wii U, you get the ability to play the DS games, as well as the modern home console games and HD remakes. So, in the end, the GameCube is on top at 13 games because of the Game Boy Player. Second place goes to the Wii U, but there's a few good reasons to prefer it over the GameCube. HDMI output is a good one. The D-pad on the Pro and tablet controllers they're just nicer than the GameCube's D-pad, and you also get to play every popular Zelda game from the beginning up until right now. The GameCube can't play anything newer than Twilight Princess. The 3DS rules the handheld world with 11 or 12 playable games, depending if you have a regular or new 3DS. It's definitely a good choice. A Game Boy Advance isn't bad either, and it allows you to play almost all 2D Zelda games. And there you have it. I thought it was an interesting topic to look at. There's no console that can play every Zelda game these days, but some do get quite close. I hope you found the video interesting and maybe even helpful. Just so you know, I do have a second channel too. I post some less edited stuff there as well as the occasional video that doesn't quite fit the main channel. And everything else I do is on the screen now and also in the description. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again in the next video.